Tonight, someone you love will fall asleep facing a window. Tomorrow morning, without thinking, they'll turn toward the light the moment they wake. By the end of this, you'll never look at a sunrise the same way again. You do this too. You just don't notice it. There's a reason your body orients itself toward light. It's older than language, older than agriculture, older than the wheel. It comes from a habit your ancestors practiced so consistently, archaeologists can trace it across continents that never once made contact with each other. They buried their dead facing the sunrise. Not sometimes. Not in one region. In graves separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, bodies were positioned east, toward the horizon, toward the place where light returns after darkness. Why would people who never met, who spoke no shared language, who had no way of comparing notes, all arrive at the same instinct? The answer starts with something simpler than religion. It starts with fear. Darkness, to early humans, wasn't just an absence of light. It was an absence of information. You couldn't see a predator's approach. You couldn't see the edge of a cliff. You couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. For a species that survives by anticipating threats, night was the one stretch of time where anticipation became impossible. And death looked exactly like that. Silent, still, unresponsive to sound or touch. To an early human watching someone die, it must have looked like watching someone fall permanently into that same darkness. Not sleep, not rest. The deepest night there was. So they responded to death the same way they responded to actual darkness. They pointed it toward the light. This wasn't only symbolic, it was practical psychology, thousands of years before anyone had the word for psychology. If night was danger and day was safety, then orienting a body toward the rising sun was an act of protection, a final gesture of care, aimed at guiding something helpless back toward safety, the same way you'd nudge a child's face toward a doorway before letting go of their hand. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. You still do this. Not with bodies, with yourself. When you're anxious, you look for light. You reach for your phone screen in the dark, not because you need information, but because a glowing rectangle feels safer than an unlit room. When you wake from a nightmare, the first thing you do is find a light switch. When grief hits hardest, it's almost always at night. And it eases, even slightly, the moment morning arrives. None of that is coincidence. None of that is modern. That's the same ancient circuitry your ancestors were following when they turned a body toward the horizon. There's something else buried in this practice, and it's stranger than the fear. East wasn't just where the sun happened to rise. East was where it came back. Every single day, without fail, for the entire span of human existence, darkness had been temporary. The sun set, and the sun returned. Death was the only kind of darkness your ancestors had ever seen that didn't seem to reverse, so they treated it like it might. By facing a body toward the sunrise, early humans weren't only comforting themselves. They were making a bet that whatever process governed the sun's return might apply to a person too. That if you positioned someone correctly, facing the one direction where light always came back, maybe something of them would return with it. This is the moment religious and spiritual traditions across the world start to diverge into different explanations, different names for an afterlife, different gods responsible for carrying a soul forward. But strip away the mythology, and the underlying behavior is identical. Orient the body toward return. Whether that return was reincarnation, resurrection, or simply rejoining the sky, the direction was always the same. You can see the shadow of this belief in how modern humans still talk about death, even people who don't consider themselves religious at all. You say someone passed instead of ended. You say a light went out. You describe sudden death as someone being here one moment and gone the next. Gone, not destroyed. The language itself assumes movement, not termination. A direction, not a stop. That's not an accident of vocabulary. That's an inherited assumption. One your ancestors buried into the ground, quite literally, long before anyone wrote it down. Here's where it gets personal. Think about the last time you lost someone, or watched someone else lose someone. Somebody in that room, at some point, said something about the person being in a better place, or at peace now, or watching over us. You may have said it yourself, almost automatically without deciding to. That instinct, the need to imagine the dead as facing somewhere, going somewhere, still oriented toward something, isn't a modern comfort. It's a direct descendant of a burial position practiced on nearly every continent by people who never once spoke to each other. You inherited a behavior designed to answer a fear neither you nor your ancestors could fully name. The fear that darkness might be permanent, that once someone disappears into it, there's no version of morning that brings them back. And so, without evidence, without proof, without any way of knowing for certain, they turned the dead toward the sunrise anyway. Not because they knew it would work, because facing the light was the only thing that ever had. Tonight, when you fall asleep, notice which direction you turn. Tomorrow morning, notice what your body does the instant it wakes, long before your mind catches up. You've been doing this your whole life. You just never knew you were repeating a ritual your ancestors performed for their dead.